Hello and welcome back, future scientists. I have another great lesson prepared for y'all today, so we'll go ahead and get started. Now today we're talking about something called amino acids. Now these acids aren't the type that can hurt you or burn you. These are actually acids that are inside of every single one of your cells. They're inside the cells of every single animal, and in fact every living organism has one of these types of acids that we're going to be talking about today. We're talking about nucleic acids, and these can be found inside of the nucleus of your cells. So let's go ahead and get the ball rolling on this. So y'all, what are nucleic acids and what are they used for? Well, nucleic acids are the building blocks of DNA. Okay, remember that DNA is inside the nucleus of each of our cells, and that the DNA kind of controls what the cells are doing. Okay, this is also how you've probably realized this before. You kind of look like your parents a little bit. So when you're born, your parents pass on their genes to their offspring. Okay, offspring is like another word for child. Well, the way that they're able to pass on those genes is that they give half of your DNA comes from your mom and half of your DNA comes from your dad. And so this nucleic acids is inside of you, it comes from your parents, and this is why you kind of look like them. Okay? So nucleic acids, what are their functions? Well, they're mostly used to store and carry genetic information. Okay? Every single one of your cells has DNA in it. The DNA tells the cells what to do. And again, this is how we pass on our genes from parent to offsprings. Okay, I wanted to point out that second bullet point as well. This is very important. Nucleic acids are made up of a monomer called nucleotide. So try to remember that word for me. Nucleotide is the monomer of DNA. Okay, and we'll talk about those in a little bit more detail. Now, the best example of nucleic acids are DNA, but there is another form of nucleic acids called RNA, which we'll talk about a little bit today and get into in more detail later on in the year. Okay? So let's talk about the discovery of the structure of DNA to start with. So this is a fairly recent discovery. I know 1953 probably seems like forever ago for y'all, but some of y'all's parents or grandparents might have been alive before this discovery was made. So we've made huge leaps in this field over the past few decades. So there's really two names I need you to remember. It's James Watson and Francis Crick. They are the two scientists that are credited with discovering the structure of DNA. So try to remember those two names, Watson and Crick. Okay, this was 1953. They discovered the structure of DNA, which is a double helix. Kind of think of a ladder that's twisted up a little bit. That's what DNA looks like. Okay, now I did want to mention this other scientist. Her name is Rosalind Franklin. She played a huge role in helping discover the structure of DNA, but unfortunately she died before the Nobel Peace Prize was given to Watson and Crick, and so she didn't really get the credit that she deserved. Long story short, she was really good at taking pictures of really small things. She took a picture of DNA, and Watson and Crick came into her scientific lab, found the picture, and it was kind of their eureka moment on what the shape of DNA could look like. Unfortunately, she never really got the credit that she deserved, and she didn't get her Nobel Peace Prize because she had died by the time Watson and Crick got there. So for this class, you really want to remember Watson and Crick, but just outside of biology class, let's also remember Rosalind Franklin because she played a huge role in our understanding of this scientific principle. Okay? So let's talk about nucleic acids in a little bit more detail. Remember, nucleic acids make up DNA. Okay? So these are the atoms that make up nucleic acids. It's C-H-O-N-P. So just remember the word chomp. Okay, like you chomp down on a sandwich. Instead, we've switched the M for the N. Now, these represent the atoms that make up nucleic acids, which are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. So just remember the word chomp, and that'll help you remember what atoms make up nucleic acids. During that biology state test, they're always going to ask you questions on what atoms can be found in which type of macromolecules. Okay, so nucleic acids are made up of a smaller structure called a nucleotide. Well, what are nucleotides composed of? Nucleotides are made up of a sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base. A sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base. Nucleotides are made up of a sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base. Okay, and there's two main types of nucleic acids. You have DNA, which is inside of every single cell that you can imagine, and then there's also RNA. And RNA plays a really important job in making proteins. They do carry some genetic information, but their main job is kind of helping our body to make proteins, and we'll get into that later on in the year. Okay, so what's the function of DNA again? Well, remember, DNA directs and controls all the activities of the cell, but it's also how we pass on our genetic information from parent to child. Okay? So let's talk about nucleotides in a little bit more detail. Okay, all nucleic acids are made up from a combination of nucleotides. There's 5 different types of nucleotides when it comes to their bases, which we'll talk about more later on in the year. A brief overview right now, a nucleotide can have a different nitrogen base, and those different types of nitrogen bases are called uracil, cytosine, thymine, adenine, and guanine. Okay, you'll only find cytosine, thymine, adenine, and guanine in DNA, and then uracil is not in DNA, it is in RNA. The reason that this is important is in a lot of pictures of DNA, you'll see little bases with just the abbreviations. So C, T, A, and G. If you ever see those letters, those are representing these different nucleotide and the different nitrogen bases that can make them up. Okay, so nucleotides are made up of 3 parts. What makes up a nucleotide? A sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base. A sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base. Nucleotides are made up of a sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base. And again, it's that nitrogen base that can be one of 4 different options. So in DNA, that nitrogen base can either be thymine, guanine, adenine, or cytosine, which are the A, T, C, G that you'll see sometimes, okay? Great, so that's kind of the overview of nucleic acids. I just kind of have a couple of review questions about it. I want to see if y'all can kind of answer these for me, and then I've got some more review questions on a little worksheet that we'll do here in just a second. So I've got some questions. I'd love for y'all to follow along. If you know the answer, shout it out nice and loud. That way your classmates know that you've been paying attention, and you can show everybody how smart you are. I've got a couple of cheat sheets up here. These 2 pictures might help you answer some of those questions. So if you're really struggling, just look at those, and there might be a hint in there for you somewhere. Okay, so first question, there are some elements that we can find inside of nucleic acids. Does anyone remember the word I gave you to remember the different elements that make up nucleic acids? You might have said the word CHOMP, and that's really the important word that I want you to remember. Remember CHOMP, these are the elements that are inside of nucleic acids. That stands for carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. And again, we just replace the M with an N to make it a little bit easier to remember. Okay, so the next question I have for you is, what is the function of nucleic acids? What's their main job that they're doing for us in our bodies? There's a lot of different answers here, but they all revolve around the same thing. If you said anything about genetic information, you're right on the money with that. So they store our genetic information, they transmit heredity, so that's how we pass on our traits to our offspring, and they also transfer genetic information from the nucleus to the cytoplasm when we're making proteins. Okay, so there are 2 types of nucleic acids that I've talked about today. Does anyone remember the name of the different types of nucleic acids? And there's a picture of them up here on the board somewhere. That's right, you have DNA and RNA. And again, these stands for, DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. So nucleic acid is right in the name. RNA is ribose nucleic acid. So those are 2 examples of RNA that are very, very important. Okay, what are the monomers of nucleic acids? Nucleic acids make up DNA and RNA, but what are nucleic acids made up of? Hopefully you said the word nucleotide. Remember, nucleotides make up nucleic acids. Nucleotide and nucleic acid kind of sound alike, so that should be easy enough to remember. Here's where it gets a little bit more confusing, is that you also have to know what nucleotides are made up of. And there's 3 parts of a nucleotide. Does anyone remember those 3 different parts? I said it a couple times, so it's a sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base. A sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base. Nucleotides are made up of a sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base. Okay, so great job. Thanks for following along with me today. I've got a couple of review questions I wanted you to do. So teacher, go ahead, hand out those worksheets for me real quick. Pause the video. Y'all go ahead, take 10, 15 minutes to work on it on your own, and then when y'all are ready, y'all can come back and unpause the video, and I'll cover it up here on the board just so we're all on the same page. So go ahead and pass them out and pause the video and come back to me when you're ready. All right, everybody, thanks. I hope that wasn't too much, too difficult for anybody, so really appreciate that. I'm going to do them up here on the board, so y'all feel free just to follow along with me, change or add anything that you don't have. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started on this. So number 1 says, explain how monomers are related to polymers. Okay, so for this, at this point we should know that monomers make up polymers. Another way to say this is polymers are made up of monomers. Remember, monomers are the small one, polymers are the big ones. A lot of monomers strung together and united make up a polymer. Okay, great job. So what we're doing on these next couple of questions is I am going to give you either the monomer or the polymer, and it's your job to find the matches there. So let's look at number 2 and see what y'all came up with. This says match the monomer on the left to the macromolecule on the right. Okay, the first one says fatty acids and glycerol. What should we put there? I'm liking the letter B for this. Remember that lipids is just a fancy science word for fats, and the monomers that make up lipids are called fatty acids. So that's kind of easy to remember. All right, the next one is monosaccharide. Monosaccharide is a type of what? It is a type of carbohydrate, okay? Monosaccharides are sugar, and carbohydrates are either simple or complex sugars, okay? The next one, nucleotide. Well, we just talked about this, so you should definitely remember this one. Nucleotides make up nucleic acids. You see how the words are very similar there? Nucleic acid, nucleotide, they go together. Okay, last one, process of elimination makes it a little bit easy. We got amino acids. Amino acids make up what? They make up protein, so A for that one. Great job. All right, they might get a little trickier as we keep going though, so let's look at number 3. All right, so this says match the polymer on the left to the macromolecule on the right. So DNA is a type of what? DNA is a type of nucleic acid. We were just talking about that one. All right, how about this next one, enzymes? You're going to have to think back a couple of lessons for this one. Enzymes are a type of what? They are a type of protein. Great job. Okay, how about triglyceride? Triglyceride, what is that an example of? That is a lipid. So B for that one. And then lastly, polysaccharide. Polysaccharide is a type of what? It's a type of carbohydrate. One thing I would point out real quick, hopefully y'all remember this from earlier in this unit, but look at these two words, saccharide, saccharide. They're both carbohydrates. Saccharide is just a word for sugar. So this is a simple sugar, this is a complex sugar, but they're both carbs. Okay, great job. I got a couple more for us. So let me get this erased and we'll knock out the bottom half of this real quick. All right, got a couple more. So now 4 says match the monomer on the left to the polymer on the right. All right, well, we got fatty acids and glycerols. So what is that going to go with? That's going to go with a phospholipid, okay? The next one is monosaccharide. What is monosaccharide going to go with? Well, I kind of just talked about it there just a second ago. Monosaccharide, polysaccharides, they're both carbohydrates, so that's the match here. Okay, how about a nucleotide? Nucleotide is a type of, they make up nucleic acids. Do we see a nucleic acid over here? We do. B, RNA is a ribonucleic acid. So those go together. This next one, amino acids. Amino acids make up proteins. Which of these on the right is a protein? It's an enzyme, C. Okay, number 5 says to match the monomer on the left to the polymer on the right. Okay, so a little bit different. So now we've got fatty acids and glycerol. Well, they make up lipids, and a triglyceride is a type of lipid. So B is going to go there. All right, next we have glucose. Glucose is a type of carbohydrate. Do we see another carbohydrate on the right? That should be starch. Glucose is simple and starch is complex, but they're both carbohydrates. The next one is a nucleotide. Nucleotides make up nucleic acids. Do we see a nucleic acid on the right? We do. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. Next up, amino acids. Amino acids make up proteins. Do we see a type of protein on the right? We do. It's going to be letter A. Great job, y'all. So take a second, fill those in. I got 2 more for y'all, and then we'll kind of keep the ball rolling after that. All right, let's knock this last bit out. All right, so 6 says to match the monomer on the left to the polymer on the right. Okay, so to get us started with number 6, the first one says amino acid. Okay, amino acids make up what? Amino acids make up proteins, so it's going to be letter C here. All right, the next one is nucleotides. Nucleotides make up nucleic acids. Do we see a type of nucleic acid on the right? We do. DNA is a type of nucleic acid. Next one is monosaccharide. Monosaccharide is a carbohydrate. Do we see another carbohydrate on the right? You might need to think back a little bit. This one's a little tricky, but glycogen. Remember that your body stores carbohydrates in your body as glycogen for 24 hours, so those are both types of carbohydrates. The last one here, fatty acids and glycerol. Those are types of lipids, and a lipid over here on the right is B, a phospholipid. Last one, y'all. Thanks for hanging in there with me. 7 says to match the polymer on the left to the macromolecule on the right. All right, cholesterol. What is cholesterol? Cholesterol is a fat, and fats are just lipids. So let's go with D for that one. Next one up is enzymes. Does anyone remember what type of macromolecule an enzyme is? This one's really important. I need you to remember that enzymes are a type of protein, so letter A for this one. All right, RNA, there's a hint in the name. What does RNA stand for? RNA stands for ribose nucleic acid. So that one, once I say the whole word, it's easy to see how that one's going to be letter B. All right, and then cellulose. What about cellulose? Well, let's remember that most sugars end in the ending OSE, and sugars are always carbohydrates. So cellulose is a type of carbohydrate. So y'all, thank you so much for hanging in there with me. Your teacher has some other work for you to practice on. Make sure to give it your best effort, and I hope everybody has a great day.